To buy a domain, what I usually do is go to Namecheap. So namecheap.com. And Namecheap is a really reliable place to buy domains. I have found it to be great, and that's where I keep all of my domain names. So what I do first is I search for my domain name. So let's search for how to learn. Actually, let's go to learn C#. All right, and I'm not going to put an extension on here. I'm just going to learn C#, hit the little search button. I do this a lot because I find out what's available and what's not. So for example, learnc#.academy is available at $15 per year. And so is .ai at $58 per year or $59 per year. .org is available at $667 for the first year and then $13 after that, and so on. And here's all the other results that are available as well. If you're looking for a specific domain extension, for example, .com, do that, and then it will tell you if it's available. And if it's not available, you can make an offer, or you can find other domains that match that might work for you. Personally, I prefer a .com because that's what everyone thinks of when they think of a domain name, is a .com. So be careful not to get too cute. Now, I think this is available, how to learn C#.com. And it is available. It's available at $8.88 a year. Now, when you see this video, it won't be available because I'm going to buy it. So I'm going to walk you through the process of how to do that. Add to cart. Now, it's going to offer us some additional things. Web hosting. We don't want to do that, but you can if you want. It's $2.88 a month. However, they don't do .NET Core hosting, so I prefer not to use them for web hosting. Again, WordPress from $1 a month, VPN, business cards, email hosting. These are not things I'm going to use. But Positive SSL, which gives me an SSL certificate for this domain name, I'm going to add that to cart. Now I can hit View Items, and I can see my shopping cart has two things: how to learn C# and the SSL certificate for that, for a total of $12.94. I'm going to hit Checkout. At the checkout page, it's going to go through all of my information. Domain name registration is for 1 year. That means that every year it's going to come back up and say, hey, you need to pay again to keep this domain. Now, auto renew is turned on, which is great, which means that as long as my credit card on file is the same, it's going to renew that domain name. The worst thing you can do is have a domain name that you actually depend on lapse, because someone else will probably snag it up and you have to buy it back. So 1 year, maybe you say, you know what, I want this for 10 years. You could do that. I prefer to do 1 year and auto renew because I have found that my domain names might change a little bit. The domain names I was using, I'm not using anymore. And so, especially with things like this, where I've got an idea that I want to use this domain, but it's not an actual production app yet, I'm going to choose just 1 year, but I'm going to turn auto renew on. You will get a warning email saying, hey, in the coming days, we're going to update or renew this domain. And so if you don't want to do anything, if you leave it alone, it's going to renew. But you can go in there and say, oh, no, I don't want that anymore. That idea didn't pan out, or I didn't actually build that app, or whatever the case may be. So this allows you to save some money. Then down here, WhoisGuard. And what WhoisGuard does, and it's enabled by default, it's free forever. So it's not something you pay for. It used to be, but not anymore. WhoisGuard says when you do a Whois search for this domain, we're not going to give your personal information away. You see, when you register a domain, you have to say who you are. You have to say, hey, I'm Tim Corey, here's my address, here's my email address, here's my phone number. That stuff used to be on a Whois registry. And so if I went to Whois and I looked up this domain name, it would show my personal information. Not great, but the idea behind that was that websites will be registered by companies. And so companies, they can put their address on there, and that way we know who to talk to if it's a problem. But then there came this thing where personal people were personally registering domain names. Well, I'm not a company. My personal address probably isn't something I want to have spread out all over the internet for anybody to look up, for spammers to get, for my email address and my phone number. I don't want that. So WhoisGuard says, okay, Namecheap will put their own registration on this, and then they'll be the register of choice. Okay, so they'll have their information on it, even though you own it. So yes, I want that on, and auto-renew that as well. Premium DNS, if you don't have a DNS server, DNS is for domain name services. What that's for is, think of it, and maybe it's a little too old for some of you, but think like a phone book where you have your domain name, howtolearncsharp.com, but that's not how computers find each other on the web. They find each other through IP addresses. And so the DNS says, howtolearncsharp.com, okay, look it up, and the IP address is 1.2.3.4. And then it starts routing to that location. So that's what DNS is, and you can associate some premium DNS that Namecheap offers with this domain. It's going to cost you $4.88 a year. I'm not going to turn it on for this domain. You can also go through a company called Cloudflare and use their DNS instead, and that can come with some added benefits. It's up to you how you do it. I'm going to not turn it on for this. All right, Positive SSL for 1 year is $3.88. That's on sale. Normally it's $8.88. If I do 2 years, I believe it will change. Oh, no, it's still on sale. So I can get the sale rate if I wanted to for more than 1 year. Sometimes they do a sale for just the first year. I believe the renewal will not be on sale though. So that's kind of their encouragement to do more than 1 year. I'm going to leave it at 1 year. I could add more things to it, web hosting, VPN, or email hosting. So I'm not going to do that. I'm going to hit confirm order. And here's all the confirmation details. So with this, it's going to have all my information. I'm logged in, so I have my settings on file. So just note that I do have stuff down there, but it is start out, so you can't really see it. But with that, we're going to go ahead and check out. So we'll hit pay now. We'll wait for it to process. And this is usually a pretty quick process where it's going to actually create our domain name for me, or create the association and say, okay, I've grabbed that for you, I'm registering it in your name, and now you have access to it. It's a pretty quick process usually. See, we're already done. Now I can go to this Manage button right next to howtolearncsharp.com, and I can manage my domain name. This takes me to my domain name list, which, as you can see, I have quite a few. But if we scroll down to How to Learn C#, I can hit Manage next to it. And inside here, I can do multiple things. Right now, we have, this is the basic overview, and it says down here, here's our DNS settings. So I can add some DNS settings if I want to. Notice it comes with DNS, just not premium DNS. And premium DNS gives you 100% uptime and distributed denial of service protection. But the big one is this name servers right here. If you change this to a custom DNS and a custom name server, you can change who is doing your DNS. So that's pretty quick to do. Say custom DNS, and you tell it who is doing your DNS, and you're good to go. Okay? Beyond that, if you want to go to advanced DNS, this is not the paid DNS, but you can add new DNS records here. So this CNAME record is for www. What that means is it's going to redirect to this the redirect URL goes to www.howtolearnC#, and that's going to point to parkingpage.namecheap.com. We don't want to do that. We're going to point to an actual host at some point, but that's where we're going to change it, is right there. But you can add your own records. Notice an A record and a CNAME record and a TXT record and so on. You can even add MX records down below for mail server. If this is all confusing to you, don't worry. You don't have to really understand most of this. What's going to happen is that when you have a domain name registrar, when you have a web registrar, and they say, okay, you got a website, and I'm going to say, okay, I want to point this URL at it, then they're going to say, okay, here are the settings to add. And you come into your advanced DNS, you go to add record, you put in the settings they say, you can delete the ones that are existing, and you're good to go. You're all set up for pointing to that other location for your web hosting. The same is true for your email hosting. When you want to have email through, let's say, Gmail. So you can have a Gmail, but it's hosted with your email address, which you pay for. It's about $5 per month per user. But you could do that, and then Gmail will say, okay, here are the mail settings to add to your site. Okay? And so you're going to have to add your own custom MX in there and then start adding in records. Okay? So that's what it's going to tell you to do, and that's how you do it. And that's pretty much it. Okay? Okay, so that was how to buy and then configure a domain name through Namecheap. Again, I recommend Namecheap. I personally do not recommend buying or even getting a free domain name through your web host. It sounds great, but what it really does is it kind of locks you into that web host. And that web host, next year, that domain name usually isn't free. Usually that domain name costs you something the second year. And even if it doesn't, when you decide, you know what, this web host isn't quite what I want it to be, or I need to change something, I need to move on from this, you're kind of tied into that web host. It's a little hard to get out because you have to change not only who your registrar for your name is, but you also have to change your DNS settings because they're probably on the same web host, and that can be tricky to do. So I just prefer to have everything separate so I own it. I like the ownership, I like the control, so that I can choose at a later date to move to a different web host, and it's a matter of changing these records right here, and I'm done. Okay? So that's what I prefer. It's up to you if you want to do that or not, but I recommend Namecheap to do that.